What's up guys, Chris VA Travels here in historic Fredericksburg, and I'm going to be making a video on Caroline Street, main drag running through town. Lots of historic buildings, many going back to the mid 18th century. And I'm going to try and cover 6 blocks. Might be too much. I may have to split this into 2 videos, we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to start off down here at the train station at the 500 block. But yeah, I got most of my information off of a couple old history books on Fredericksburg, just telling what the buildings were back in the 1800s. I've been on a lot of forums online, Facebook, so I'll be relying on some user comments. Hopefully they're correct. And then my dad was down here last weekend, told me what a lot of the buildings were back in the 1950s and 60s. So, okay, so starting off, 500 block of Caroline Street in front of me at the intersection of Caroline and Lafayette Boulevard. And Lafayette Boulevard will take you up into Spotsylvania County. It's named after Marquis de Lafayette, the French general that helped us out during the American Revolution. And it was named Lafayette Boulevard in 1935. Back in the 1800s, it was called Prussia Street, and it just extended several blocks before it ended, actually. Since I'm right here, I'll tell you about the train station. And this is the RF&P line. It goes down to Richmond. RF&P, Richmond, Fredericksburg, Potomac line. And it was first laid back in 1836, came from Richmond up here to Fredericksburg. Actually, 1837, it totally made its way to Fredericksburg. And then 1842, it was extended to Aquia there on the Potomac. After that, you would take a ferry across to get to Washington, D.C. And then 1927, this kind of bridge was put in because originally the tracks just ran across the street here. And it's because they had built the higher, taller bridge, apparently, crossing the Rappahannock. So yeah, that's the history on the train station. Oh, I don't think I ever noticed that. It says 1910 on the front. And cool bullseye window on the gable. Center chimney. Oh, a little bit of a hipped roof. And these lunette windows going across. Oh, and I think at one time it said the RF&P line was the oldest line in the South. I might be wrong about that. I've found out there was a line down in Charleston that predates it by a couple years. But right across the street, this parking lot here, way back in the day, used to be the Liberty Cafe. It was built in 1920 by the Calamos family. They were Greek immigrants. And I remember seeing their graves when I was over at the Fredericksburg City Cemetery. And then at one time there was a Paris Inn, and I'm not sure if it was on this lot. It might have been to the left. And it was a kind of a black bar. That was the African-American section of town, kind of on Princess Anne Street right there, that area. And for a long time, Bunbury Cab, a black-owned business cab company, was right there where that little booth is. Okay, so let me walk over, take a look at the John Paul Jones house. All right, so right across the street here, this is the John Paul Jones house. John Paul Jones, he was a famed naval commander during the American Revolution. And he lived here with his brother, and this was actually his brother's house. John Paul Jones stayed here for about 2 years. And the building we're looking at was actually built in 1839, so there must have been a dwelling on that spot right before then. And John Paul Jones, he actually came to the States. He came here to kind of hide out because he was on the run for a murder charge. Yeah, he had killed somebody during a mutiny while at sea. Yeah, so, and his name was just John Paul when he came, and kind of local legend has it that he went over to the St. George's Church, which is over there on Princess Anne Street. He saw a grave of a John Jones, just thought it sounded cool, so he changed his name to John Paul Jones. And then his brother William, who owned the house that was on this spot, he's buried over that St. George's Church. All right, walked across the street here, and I'll go across and take a look at that plaque. But at one time, this was the Sanitary Grocery. They moved across the street, and then it became the C&G Grocery, popular grocery store, and my mom actually did a painting of it. Maybe I'll throw that picture in the video. Okay, so erected by the Betty Washington Lewis chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution in 1910. This tablet marks the only home in America of John Paul Jones. I'm not sure that's completely true because I just so happened to be in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I remember visiting a house they said that he had lived in. Anyway, he was appointed a lieutenant in the Continental Navy while still a resident of Virginia. Yeah, pretty cool. And I remember I had found a picture online of some kids playing outside of this thing. Oh, right there, they've got a little Navy anchor on the door there. Cool. Paying homage. Yeah, there's a couple things on this block, but things really pick up once I get to about Hanover Street, a couple blocks down. Little convenience store. Checking out 511 and circa 1763. Wow. Boot scraper down there. Townhome across the street. Pretty cool little designs on the sides of the lintels there above the windows. Some really old wooden shutters. And you see the slate tiles. A lot of houses were built like this. There were several fires that blew through Fredericksburg. So then they would build supposedly fireproof brick homes with these slate tiles. And actually, I see a plaque on that. Let me walk across, take a look at it. Okay, William Rollo Residence, 1826. Check out these old kind of mailboxes. Pretty cool. Next door, 514. And a really old historic Fredericksburg Foundation plaque. All right, so this duplex across the street here with this really steep pitched roof. And I remember I had found a photo online of a little girl at the front door at 517, so maybe I'll lay that on top of the video. Oh, and pro tip across the street, really good coffee shop right here in this really old building, clapboard building called Agora. And yeah, it looks like that was the side, and the entrance would have been in that little alley right there. Going way back, 1787, home and store of merchant Humphrey McAusland. Oh, and Caroline Street was called Main Street back in the day, back in the 1800s. And Caroline, it's named after Queen Caroline, and she is the wife of King George II. Yeah, and he was on the throne when Fredericksburg was established, 1728. Moving on, this big building right here, you can see there was something in this alley at one time, obviously. A couple things, maybe. Yeah, so this was the old Elk Lodge. Original building built 1924. In 1936, it was upgraded, expanded to what you see now, but yeah, a couple distinct bays protruding on each end. It's now the Fredericksburg Square. And there's a marker on this one. Let me take a look at it. Okay, well, this is saying 1925. My source said 1924, but oh, so in 1854, townhome built for B.B. Sackery. Oh, there's a bar right there. I was in here years ago. Came across the street for a better look. All right, so see those dormers up there. Pretty nice looking building. But the Elks Lodge, they moved out in 1990s, and that's when it became this Fredericksburg Square. And then there was a really nice first-class restaurant inside, they say, called Albertine's. Yeah, and if anybody watching knows any additional information on any of these buildings, please put it down in the comments. Oh, right here is the 1890 Caroline House. And this is a bed and breakfast that's a part of the Richard Johnston Inn, which we're gonna pass in a little bit. But really cool brackets on the overhang there. Yeah, check out the cornice. Pretty nice. And I'll just take a peek in the back, and they've got the horse tie up right here. Oh, kind of nice, quiet space back here. Oriental statue. All right. Let me see what this plaque says. Robert Adams Residence, 1891. Old letterbox right here. And yeah, okay, pretty nice inside. Nice chair. Oh, and one of these old card holders. And that was a popular thing in the 1800s. Leave your calling card. First intersection, Wolfe Street, named after a French and Indian War General James Wolfe. Not sure why they selected his name. Maybe he was just hot at the time. But if you go way further down, there's a Pitt Street named after William Pitt, another general from the French and Indian War. Across the street here, corner of Wolfe and Caroline, beginning of the 600 block. And before this fancy building was here, this was the John Michael grocery store. And behind it, I had read there was a colored school, kind of where that kind of fire station, or I don't even know if it's still an active fire station. All right, so Fredericksburg's version of a skyscraper. The 6-story building, the Executive Plaza, it was built in 1974. And kind of doesn't, a lot of people think it's an eyesore, kind of doesn't fit in with the other historic buildings in the area. Anyway, you've got the visitor center on the first floor. It moved here a couple of years ago. It was just about a block further up. We'll get to where it used to be. And I'll tell you that way back when, it was the JDW Masters Lumberyard and Sales Room. And if you come to visit, there's a parking deck, a parking garage behind it. And when you're down here, be careful walking and driving. There are a lot of out-of-towners who aren't familiar with all the ins and outs, all the crosswalks and one-way streets. All right, across the street here, 602 Caroline. And I had read from a source online that George Washington had owned this plot back in the 1740s. I'm not sure that's true because he was born in 1732, so he would have been 8 years old in 1740. But anyway, it eventually fell into the hands of a Scottish merchant with the last name Reed, and it became Reed's Merchant Store. That burned down in 1849. 1852 is when this brick building was built, and it operated as the Fredericksburg Gas Company until 1918. Right next door to the Executive Plaza, 611 Caroline, nice brick building. You see some extensions on the back. Oh, a little kind of brick entranceway. It's probably a pretty nice property at one time. Got the fancy fluted Doric columns and little hoods on the chimney up there. But okay, so 1852. Let's see, it was built for James B. Timberlake. And next door to it, don't have any information on this building. If anybody knows, like I say, put it down in the comments. And kind of a neat surround on the windows up there. So it looks like it might have been something kind of important at one time. Yeah. All right, wanted to walk across, get a better look at it. And looks like it was more than just a house. So again, if anybody knows what it was, let me know in the comments. Hip roof up there. Again, pretty good crowns on top of the windows on top. Anyway, over here we've got the Courtyard Marriott Hotel. No information on these row houses right here. Marriott was built 2011. And there's a pretty nice coffee shop down below. Just to let you know if you're walking through. But yeah, before the hotel was here, many grocery stores were on this spot, one of which was called Noodles, owned by the Cox family. And that was first taken down, so a parking lot could be built for a nearby police and fire station. So there you go. Oh, and there are also some relics on the inside. Let me walk in there real quick. Check out these plaques right here. And yeah, it was originally Roger Dixon's store. 1750s to 1771. Roger Dixon, namesake of Dixon Park, there off Tidewater Trail. And just all your usual shards. Pritchard and Thornton's carriage shop. Pretty neat. Then down here, Cassiday's Pharmacy. And yeah, it was a residence, 1839 to 1967. Oh, servants' quarters. Oh yeah, mini balls right here. Is this a bone? Butchered cow bone. But yeah, mini balls over here. Okay, keep it going. And check out this house across the street. It's called the Chimneys. And really nice slate hipped roof. And I think you can see why it's called the Chimneys. Huge chimney to the left. Built in 1771 to 1773. Built by Charles Yates. And yeah, he owned a lot of property in Fredericksburg back then. I've heard his name thrown around a few times. He eventually sold it to John Glassell. He was a wealthy merchant from Scotland. A lot of merchants from Scotland came over here to Fredericksburg. But I can tell you he was a loyalist, and he returned to Scotland in 1775. He then sold it to his brother Andrew, who was a patriot. Oh, interesting fact, I can tell you that President Chester Arthur's wife, that would be Ellen Nell Arthur, lived here as a child. And she was part of the Herndon family, namesakes of Herndon County. The town of Herndon up there in Fairfax County. Over the years, it served as the Fredericksburg Museum, a restaurant, a fancy French restaurant at one time, also a bakery. Just wanted to show you the fat chimney. I don't know if there was a kitchen right there or what. You'll see stone foundation. And really old brick wall, you know, that thing's at least 1800s. Add on right there, and looks to be an old smokehouse. And I don't think there are any other dependencies still standing. But yeah, very old building. Up on Charlotte Street, named after Queen Charlotte, and she would be the wife of King George III. King George III from Revolutionary War fame, and also the namesake of Charlotte County. Across the street here, the Virginia House, also called the Sunshine House, at the corner of Charlotte and Caroline. And this is the start, of course, of the 700 block. And built in 1776. And it said it's the oldest house on Caroline, but I just read and just told you that the Chimneys house was probably built around 1771. And it's most famous for being the home of Doris Buffett. Yeah, she lived here for a while. And they called her the Sunshine Lady, apparently. And you can see the sunshine door knock on the door there. I'll cross the street in a second. Yeah, nice brick home. Nice fan light right there. Again, they've got that slate roof. You'll see the little sunshine. And yeah, pretty big property. Goes all the way down to Sophia Street down here. And if you see the kind of sunshine design, that back fence there, that back brick wall. Here's the side of it, or the front of it originally. And okay, you can see those slate tiles pretty good. Obviously extension add-on. But Doris Buffett, she did a lot for the community. She opened the Sunshine Lady retirement home. She had something to do with the building of the Dixon Park. At least I had heard she had the pool put in. And she was kind of upset because she wanted it to be Olympic size, which would, I think, maybe have been overkill. But anyway, that's what I heard. Saw somebody say in the comments. And yeah, even slate tiles on the dormers up there. Across the street, this is the old visitor center, 706 Caroline. That red building, again, cool lintels above the window. Zoom in on those. And this current building was built in 1924 by an Anthony Cale. He was an immigrant from Central Europe, and he had opened a confectionery shop here. He was on the lower level, of course. His family lived upstairs. During the Civil War, it was a holding cell for prisoners. 1928, it was purchased by the Salvation Army, and in 1974, it became the visitor center. Yeah, just a bunch of row houses, not too much history, but this Richard Johnston Inn was something. Oh, and I'm sorry, actually right next door, 708 Caroline, Joshua Chamberlain of the famous 20th Maine during the Civil War, famous for the Battle of Gettysburg. His regiment camped right out here. I don't know if they camped in the street, but that's what I had. It says they camped in front of it. So, and then in the 1930s, it became the J.B. Mitchell Fruit and Vegetable Store. And they were famous for their bananas. Mr. Mitchell would drive his truck down to Florida and get a bunch of unripened bananas, let them hang in the basement to ripen. And he brought back a baby alligator as a pet one time. So, interesting story. And it is now the River Rock Outfitters, and that's where I bought this cool shirt that I'm wearing. So right across here, 705, 707, 709 Caroline, just some brick row houses. But next door is this Richard Johnston Inn, and this is a pretty old building. Yeah, but pretty nice bed and breakfast. And these are supposed to be bullet marks. And the sign right here says 1770, but I had read online it was built in 1799. Built by a John Taylor. And I guess any history nerds might know the Taylors. They were big out there in Warsaw, Virginia, Richmond County. And Mr. Taylor lived at the Mount Airy plantation out there. Let me walk across the street to get a better look. All right, so a view from across the street. See a center chimney. Again, those slate tiles on the dormers. But only other information I can give you is that it opened as the Richard Johnston Inn in 1986. During the Civil War, Confederate sharpshooters were on the upper floor, at the back of the house, firing on the Rappahannock to prevent the Union Army from crossing. Like I say, we're getting a little closer to kind of the happening part of town, coming up on Hanover Street. Oh, and a good place to eat for a quick bite, 722 Caroline. Benny Vitale's Pizza. And yeah, giant slice of pizza. That's kind of actual size. And it's only $5 or $6 for a slice. But yeah, across the street, this Irish Eyes building has a little bit of history, and they really do it up. Whenever you walk by on the weekend, they've always got a blow up leprechaun or something going on. Some information on this building and this lot. That there was originally a warehouse that sat here. It burned down in 1823. 1800s, this lot was owned by Peter Goolrick, and you guys will be familiar. There's a Goolrick drugstore further down. They owned a lot of property in this area. Oh, and more information about the Goolricks. They bought and sold 75 properties here in Fredericksburg. And check this out. Charles Dickens actually visited Peter here. That's pretty crazy. Then during the Civil War, they're of Scottish descent. During the Civil War, he raised the Union Jack, and he declared himself a neutral diplomat. So the Union Army would leave his building alone. But really, he was a Confederate supporter, and he had a bunch of food and goods stored down in the basement. And some Union officers became suspicious. They took it up to General Burnside. Burnside apparently took it all the way up to Abraham Lincoln. They had an investigation done, and he was busted. So they raided the place, they raided the basement, and took all of the goods. But yeah, this is a really cool store to visit. A lot of neat Irish items inside. And here you go. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, so now on Hanover Street, named after the House of Hanover, the royal house of the Georges, over there in Germany, or what was at the time the Holy Roman Empire. And keeping with the Irish theme, across the street we've got J. Bryant's Tap Room. It's an Irish pub that opened in 1961. And this building used to be the Exchange Hotel. The original Exchange Hotel burned down, and this building was built in 1866. And it was called the Exchange Hotel because I had mentioned this was part of the King's Highway. Actually, I don't know if I had mentioned it, but this was part of the King's Highway that ran from Boston all the way down to Charleston. I think eventually on down to Savannah. But anyway, people would get off their horse and buggy, stay the night at the hotel, wake up in the morning to exchange horse and buggies to head west up Hanover Street, and that would take you out to the mountains, the Blue Ridge, the western part of the state. Oh, and then I'll tell you, eventually in 1922, it became the Maury Hotel, named after Matthew Fontaine Maury, famed naval commander that lived here in Fredericksburg. And yeah, now you just have apartments up above. And across the street, another hotel. And apparently at one time, there were hotels on all four corners. This is a pretty busy intersection. But this is the Enterprise building, built in 1899. And the Athens Hotel was here at one time. And apparently on the back of the building, it still says Athens Hotel painted on there. So I'm gonna fly my drone, see if I can get a shot of it. Oh, and then also mid 20th century, there was a White and Weeks appliance store that was here, my dad was telling me. All right, so let me cross the street. Pretty cool mural right here. And Sammy T's Restaurant, pretty popular restaurant here in town. From what someone had said, White and Weeks first started out in this building and then eventually moved down to this taller gray building, which I'll get to. Closer look, pretty nice arch windows up there. These kind of round, kind of medallion things right between them. And yeah, you see where the entrance would be right there. All right, across the street, in front of that Sammy T's Restaurant. Before it was and Sammy T's, it says it opened in 1981 on the front there. Before it was Sammy T's, it was a place called Dugan's. And apparently a little bit of a rough bar. And then going back to the Civil War, it was the home of Confederate General Daniel Ruggles. And yeah, he's buried over the Confederate Cemetery. I remember seeing that a couple weeks ago. And then, yeah, like I say, oh, it was also a Texaco gas station way back when. Yeah, early 20th century. And you had gas pumps on the road right here. Pretty wild. All right, so walking down, hopped online, found out this building was built in 1901. Anybody has more information, please let me know. Check out the cornice up there. Oh yeah, it just hopped online. And according to Google AI, this was Montgomery Ward's back in the 1950s. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah, and all these department stores, of course, eventually moved out to the mall. All right. Now here at 816 Caroline, Spirits Restaurant. Okay, it says on the sign, open since 1992. And named Spirits because apparently there are apparitions on the inside. More information on this lot. 1700 Long's Ordinary was here. And an Ordinary is kind of a souped up tavern. Kind of a tavern you can stay overnight at. That burned down. Then just a small wooden house was built here. That burned down in 1814. And then in 1822, it says that these 3 row houses were built. So I don't know, maybe these 3 right here. Yeah. And then in the 1950s, these bay windows were installed to show off merchandise. Walking further down, Maggie's, a pretty good sub shop. And what's down here? Oh, some of the graves at the Masonic Cemetery. George Whedon. And he used to live at the Century Box house down on Lower Caroline. Oh, and he also owned Whedon's Tavern that we're going to get to, or the spot where it stood. Oh yeah, John Minor, General. Louis Littlepage, namesake of Littlepage Street here in Fredericksburg. All right, coming up on the intersection of George Street. In this building, this used to be J.C. Penney's. And of course, it ended up moving to the Spotsylvania Mall in the 1980s. And before that, it was M&M Lewis Drug Store. And in 1917, it moved up William Street, which is a block down, up to the left to where the Hyperion Coffee Shop is. Some locals will know what that is. But yeah, crazy to think all these big department stores were here downtown. And side of it right here extends pretty far back. And that was the Sears side entrance. It took you down to a lower level where they sold a lot of linens. My dad had told me. Oh, also said that it quite often flooded. The Rappahannock's just on the other side of the parking lot you see. And that's a free public parking lot for anybody coming to visit. But the water would quite often come halfway up George Street here. All right, so and then across the street would be the famous Goolrick's Pharmacy. Goolrick's Pharmacy, opened 1869. I think they used to have a sign inside saying that it opened in 1867, but technically it was 1869. Opened by William Barber Goolrick. He was a doctor, fought in the Civil War, joined the Confederacy when he was just 16 years old. Yeah, so he would have been in his 20s when the pharmacy opened. Yeah, and you see they're in the middle of restorations and should be open back up here soon. Oh, and George W. Bush gave a speech here in 1992 in front of a crowd of about 5,000 people, and it just gave a talk on small businesses and the economy. Pretty nice sign. Looks cool at nighttime, lit up. But yeah, looking forward to another 150 years of memories. Oh, there's the George Bush thing right up there. Oh yeah, some really old pictures, 1907. Wow. Oh look, empty lot next door, 1924, where this Ullman's now stands. So Ullman's opened 1928. Pretty nice, yeah, mansard roof up there. And my dad knows the guy who owns it, and he's in his 70s. And say when he retires, the family's just gonna sell it off. So I guess it's not gonna be around much longer. And going way back to 1885, it was Adams Bookstore. Okay, across the street, not much information on these buildings. Picker Supply, opened 1975. And I remember this was called Apple Music at one time, so I don't know. And shout out, just met Dan McCarthy. He recognized me from my channel. That was pretty cool. And yeah, nice building across the way. On the left, 909 Caroline. There used to be an old hippie bar. But on this spot, 17th century, wooden building that burned down. Surprise, surprise, stood here. Brick building was built in its place, and that was destroyed by Union gunfire 1862 during the Civil War. After that, a really nice brick building was built here, covered 3 blocks, had a nice mansard roof. That burned down in 1918, and then in 1925, big theater was built here. Built here by Benjamin Pitts. He owned a lot of property in the area, and it was originally the Pitts Theater before it became the Colonial Theater. And then the Colonial Theater, it was the nicest building in Fredericksburg at the time. You see nice Corinthian columns right there, balustrade on top, kind of sandstone coins it looks like on the sides there. But as the decades went on by, it started showing kind of second tier movies. The nicer movies were shown at the Victoria Theater. Yeah, so Colonial Theater closed down in the 1980s. After that, the space was just used for events, live music and whatnot. And then I know at one time they had some stores on the inside. So I don't know what's going on with it now, but obviously a newer building right here. And I think the plaque on the front says it's the Wilson Building. But back in the day, it used to be Beck's Furniture, back in the 50s. About 10 years ago, well, you see it's called the Card Cellar. It used to be kind of a baseball card, sports memorabilia shop, but it's more of just, I guess, an antiques type store now. And some pretty neat water drains, lion water drains above that lintel right there. And across the street right here, 912 Caroline, the Caroline Square. Nice arch windows up there. Yeah, so it's currently an antique shop, but way back when it used to be Newberry's, 5 and dime. All 3 of these buildings are antique shops, oldies and goodies. Okay, so across the way here, one of these 2 buildings, either the Capitol Ale House or the tall brick building to the left, was the Western Auto Associates store. I'm gonna go with the building on the left. Right across the way, it used to be called Corky's. I don't know if it's still Corky's, but saw a lot of military items. You see rescue, security, police, fire. But way back when, this used to be Safeway. Yeah, in 1942, opened as Safeway. And then in 1956, it moved up William Street, which is right up here to the left. And then it sat kind of where the new Publisher Hotel is, kind of in that area. The building's gone now. Right here, the Made in Virginia store. A lot of neat items in there. And this current building, this was built in 1955. And you see this alley takes you to Market Square. Kind of an area where they have events and whatnot. The Fredericksburg History Museum is in the building right in front of us, the old City Hall. But going back to the mid-18th century, there was a big kind of community town hall building that sat right here. Yeah, it was kind of the center of town. And right back here, this brick building to the left is pre-Civil War. Yeah, I just wanted to show it to you real quick. And this has been elevated over the years. It used to go down another level. And supposedly on the inside are some of the components that were used back in the 1800s. Big chimney right there, again, slate roof. Okay, now at the intersection of William and Prince William, another son of King George II. And he's a little bit famous. He was the commanding British general during the Jacobite Wars over there in Scotland, and nicknamed the Butcher. Yeah, he was pretty harsh and responsible for a lot of the clearances after the war, which caused a lot of the Scottish to come to America, actually. And this is probably the heart of town, I guess. And right across the way, this was Grant's department store. Yeah, really big department store. And then it became Ben Franklin's Some people might remember that. And there's a story some people might tell you. It's because there was a Revolutionary War hospital here and Ben Franklin had visited, but he was in France during the American Revolution and there was no battle in the area. So anyway, yeah, they used to be Ben Franklin's. Yeah, well, if anybody's into antiquing, this is the area to be. Another big antique store. This abandoned building here at 922 Caroline, this was People's Drug Store. Yeah, and it was famous. It had a popular snack bar people like to go to. And so catty corner here across William, we had Bond's Drug Store. W.L. Bond's Drug and Seed. Yeah, it covered those two buildings right there. Yeah, there used to be big awnings coming off the side. And here it is right here. And to the left of it, you had Spittler's Auto Supply. Oh yeah. Gas pumps right there. Ice cream, toys, soda water. Again, you can see how far back these buildings go. But across the way, a lot of history on this site right here. This was the site of Whedon's Tavern, owned by that General George Whedon that I told you about. He lived further down Lower Caroline Street. He was buddies with George Washington. George Washington liked to frequent. We all know he was a good dancer. He liked to gamble. He wasn't a good gambler. But this is also where the Statute for Religious Freedom was drafted. Yeah, there was a big meeting here in January of 1777. Thomas Jefferson, George Mason, George Witt, Edmund Pendleton, Thomas Ludwell all met here. That's pretty cool. And it ended up burning down 1807. Yeah, then fast forward, 1880s, a giant opera house was built here. Grand building, I'll put a picture of it. But yeah, you had a lot of vaudeville acts. The John Philip Sousa band played there. There was a Tom Thumb wedding. You had minstrel shows. And Presidents Grover Cleveland and William McKinley visited. And then it was torn down in the 1950s. And then there was a Woolworths here. And I think that's what this current building is. Yeah, it was a Woolworths. And yes, it is currently another antique shop. All right. So a couple more buildings and we're going to be hitting the end of the road down here once we get to Amelia. And this building here used to be Leggett's. And I believe it was a grocery store after that for a period. Not totally sure about that, but you see an abandoned building right now. I'll walk across the street. Nice mansard roof on these two buildings. And here's a shot of the old Leggett's. Again, moved out to the mall. I don't know what the building to the left is, if anybody, or what it was. It's got kind of a southwestern vibe to it. But yeah, next door is that Victoria Theater. And sorry, No more real information on it other than it was a place called Grandma's Coffee Shop at one time. Pretty big to be a coffee shop, but it was ran by two ladies, it says. And now it's the back of the Fredericksburg Baptist Church. Okay, and up here we're gonna have Hugh Mercer's Apothecary. And this actually is the site of the original apothecary. It used to be Caddy Corner right across the way, right over here. But this building does date back to the 18th century. And Hugh Mercer, he practiced medicine in Fredericksburg from 1761 to 1765 when he went off to fight in the American Revolution. Ended up dying in the Battle of Princeton. But I can tell you that one time, early 1900s, it was a Ford dealership. Yeah. And just a little bit more information. You see it's also got that slate roof. But late 1800s, it was a rental property rented out to working class tenants. Back in the 1740s, this property was owned by Henry Willis. He was one of the founders of Fredericksburg and the namesake of Willis Hill, where the big National Cemetery sits up there on Maurice Heights. So, yeah, again, it originally sat over here. Fancy building right here. Finials coming off the top. Modillions and dentals on the cornice. But don't know what it was. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. Building here is now Bodyworks Gym. Pretty big building. All I can tell you is that back in the day, it was a store called Spotless. All right, I think that's gonna wrap it up. This is the end of the main section of Caroline. Although there is more to see if you go further down. About a block down, you've got the Lewis store, built in the 1700s, owned by Fielding Lewis, who owns the Kenmore Plantation, who's married to Betty Washington, George Washington's sister. Another block or two down from that, you've got the Rising Sun Tavern, which was once the residence to Charles Washington, George Washington's brother. And yeah, it's a pretty neat museum. I recommend checking it out. But yeah, I'm gonna get off here. As always, guys, like and subscribe. See you on the next one.